Doing today? Are we fired up? Oh, wait a second. This is the last set here at the conference. Are we fired up to talk about games? Well, thank you. Thank you, because we're going to talk about games today, and in particular, who in the room has this problem? Needs help, right? So one thing that we want to talk about is how can we use things that we've learned about Agile to improve how we hire people and find great people to be on Agile teams. And what I want to say is, since this, as you know, the way the program is designed here, this is not just tell. We're going to do this as show and tell. So everything I'm going to show you today, I'm going to show you a lot of pictures of activities and such. And you guys are actually going to participate a little bit yourselves, and you'll get to see how this process works and how we facilitate these types of activities to identify great people to join us at Worldwide Technology. So we shall begin, and we push the green button, right? So, all right. I have a question for you. Everyone can see the picture, right? If you think there is something wrong in this picture, I would like to ask you to raise your hand. Anybody? Is there anything wrong in the picture? No, there's not. What's interesting, what a lot of people sometimes notice is they're like, well, why did Laura Powers, who's a fellow games person who's here at the conference, why did she rip up the card? And sometimes we think that the fact that Laura ripped up the card was a bad thing, when in reality, there weren't any rules in the game that said you couldn't rip up the card. So a reason why we've explored using games to interview people at Worldwide Technology is as a way to overcome our conscious and our unconscious biases that impact how we interview people. So another funny story about Laura, I got here on Tuesday and Laura messaged me. I'm like, hey Laura, I'm all ready for my talk. It's all mapped out here in what I call a strategy map. Now the problem was this is the closet door of the hotel. And so in the spirit of maybe not breaking the rules, I was like, I don't think I can take the door from the hotel, bring it over here to the conference center and take it back, because that would be defacing the hotel room. But what I did instead was I said, let's say, can we make the sticky notes pretty? And we'll put them on scenic skyline views here in the city of New York, since this is a New York conference, so why don't we look around a little bit around town and see what we can find. So I'll tell you a story about how we got started here. So this is the type of work that my group, I lead an innovation team. This is the type of work that we do. And from some of the conversations that I've had here at the conference, I'm going to assert that probably 90% of the people in the room do this kind of work, yes? Working in collaborative groups, all working together. So here we call this an ideation session, and this is where everyone's working together to figure out where we should focus and prioritize. Sound kind of familiar, right? So if that's what we want to identify people to join us to do that, why do we do this to interview them? That just doesn't quite make sense to me. It's like, because what's wrong with this picture? Is it collaborative? No, if anything, I think it's like a court case, and it's what will happen if I stand up here and talk for too long, and Christina's going to put me on trial for not following the rules. So I don't know why we do that. So I took a step back, and as I was asked to build an innovation team at Worldwide Technology, and I said I wanted to build a great team. So the first thing about HR is if you want to work with HR, I would recommend you learn to speak their language. So has anyone read this book? Yes. The book is Good to Great. Okay, and one of the most impactful statements that is in this book, does anyone know it? Table 13 knows it because we already talked about it today. We want to get the right people on the bus, right? Yeah. And we also want to make sure that the people on the bus are in the right seats on the bus. So why would we not start doing that when we interview people? So we said, how could we do that during an interview? And what we've been working on here is one of my inspirations was in our development practice, our developers do pair programming interviews. So a developer sits down with someone who works at the company, and they actually write code together. They refactor code, they write tests, and I was like, well, that got me thinking. How could we do that for people that don't write code, but do similar types of collaborative activities? And we said, well, why don't we do some collaboration activities in our interview? Now, we didn't get there overnight. So if you see up here on the timeline, actually we started just kind of experimenting back in the fall of 2014, and I had some employees I was working with at that time, and they asked me to say, let's get some feedback for our annual reviews. And so what we did back then was we actually just, and who here knows what Speedboat is? You guys know Speedboat? It's one of the traditional innovation games. For those that don't know the Speedboat, it's a very simple metaphor. Your boat is going towards an island. What are the anchors that are slowing you down, and what are things that would help your boat go faster? And so what we did, we said, hey, let's give someone feedback. So Sue here in the front row, Sue, we're going to give you feedback. Let's talk about what we think is holding you back, and talk about that openly. We did that process. It worked very well. And so from that, we've now grown to where we have lots and lots of ways to engage people. So let's talk about this. So why does this make sense? A couple things that we wanted to make sure we addressed in this program. We want to make sure these interviews are safe. So this idea, we want to avoid that perception where a person feels singled out. And I know in one of our deep dives, table 13, we were talking about, again, are our questions inviting to people to where they feel safe to share with us, or are we intimidating them? So we want to work together. We also want to make sure things are clear. So something that I'll share, especially as I give a verbal presentation, as humans, we are inherently very poor verbal communicators. Because of communication bias and all this stuff, we don't simply communicate well. So we intentionally use metaphor. And we'll show you how we do that to say, okay, tell me more about that so we can establish a true understanding. And we want to be respectful of people. So let's actually make sure that if we have a concern in the interview process about why a person may or may not be a good fit, we're going to make that transparent. And then we're going to talk about it. Because what we'll find out is sometimes in an interview, a person may say something, and we may judge them falsely because of what we hear, and we never have a mechanism to go back to it to make sure that people have, we've given people the benefit of the doubt. So, and the list goes on and on. But I mean, sure, you guys probably want to see, like, how the heck do we do this? So the one thing before I show you the examples, the key thing about games, whenever you do a game, the game is about the debrief. And the debrief is the way that after the activity has been performed, how do we talk about what happened in a way to emphasize what we learned from the activity? So when we do interview games, and we actually have some more in-depth questions, but the simple things to think about, asking the person being interviewed, what did you learn? And then a little more specifically, what did you learn about yourself? And then also maybe, what did you learn about the job? So is it a good fit? Also, we've heard this at this conference a lot. What could you improve about how things went? And that's mutual. It's about how the interview went. It's about how you performed in the activity. Because again, in this culture, we want to be identifying ways that you could improve. So again, why don't we simulate that or allow people to experience it in real life? So you guys ready to see some crazy stuff? Okay. So we got a bunch of these here, and I figure this is where we'll spend most of the time. In advance. So all of this stuff is real, it's all playable, and I brought it all with me today. So in the deep dive out there in the couches, we're actually going to try to play some games if you guys want to experience some of this for yourself to see how you might adapt it. So this is how the interview starts. We call this the tree. And what this is here is we actually allow the candidate to decide how we're going to facilitate the interview. Yeah, sounds rather interesting, right? And so we say, here are the different types of activities. If you can see the picture, you can see there's some of the things we mentioned, speedboat. Some of the activities are up there, and all I can say is, build us a tree of how we're going to spend our time today. These interviews typically take about 2 hours. And all I can say is now that we have done this many times, we have seen all kinds of stuff happen here. We'll have people go up and they'll build us a beautiful tree that might look something like that, and they'll just do it. And we're like, okay, that's awesome. And we'll have people that will sit there and ask us lots and lots and lots of questions about what everything means. Very interesting scenario. And a very interesting way that we can say when we debrief this, what happened? So, and start to say, wow, is that the kind of person that can collaborate well with us? So in this case, this person built a tree. Sometimes people ask, why are the cards upside down? We actually use this to pace the interview. So after we do an activity, we flip it over. Most of these activities are designed to take between 8 to 10 minutes to facilitate from beginning to end. So we typically don't have time to get through all the things in the tree. So it's kind of interesting how we'll get to the end, and we didn't do everything, but we let the candidate choose where they want to focus based upon what they think is the best way to present themselves. So, and there's another tree. We got lots of trees here. So here's an interesting one. So if you just listen to Melissa's talk, what did she talk about? Yes, mission, vision, and values. So who's got corporate values or core values? Here's what you do. We were just talking about this at table 13. Why don't we tell some stories about them? So what you do is you write your core values down on a paper plate or whatever, and then you get out your story cubes here, and you roll the story cubes, and then you just talk about them. And in this case, we were talking about trust, we were talking about leadership, and we were talking about entrepreneurship. And so the candidate sorted the story cubes and then told us a story about it. And then in particular, they decided to put the tree in the middle because they thought for an organization to be healthy, you need to be doing things at all times to grow these values. And that was not in the initial game, so the game's kind of modified. But again, fascinating way to really learn about how people think. So we call that story time. Here's an interesting one. This is called the career forecast. It involves the weather. So this is where what we've done is we've taken a lot of the things that we do in our practice and we put them on these little cards. And all we ask people to do is say, hey, could you please sort these for us? And at the top of the board, we want you to put the things that you really, really like doing. And at the bottom of the board, we want you to put the things, you know what, you really don't want to do. And then after you organize them, tell us about it. Why did you arrange them that way? We also move them from left to right to kind of say what are the things that you're ready to kind of get started and what are things where you need some mentoring. So we do that again, fascinating. Tell us what you learned about yourself by sorting our work. And what this helps me do as a manager, it lets me see, wow, how does this person line up to joining the team? Oh man, they could really mentor some of the people on the team already that want to learn more about these things that this new person has shared they feel they're good at. I'm like, as a manager, who wants to know that kind of stuff? Yeah, really useful. Another funny thing that happens is, and why I appreciate this conference, I am so thankful we're going to form a governance community because everyone throws governance away. And you know what that means? I love governance. It means I have to do all that work. I'm a working manager, so I have to go work and do all that stuff. So we need some more governance people. So here's a funny one that happened in real life. This individual, so people have found out, people have asked, can people game these things now? Because I've talked at conferences, we've done workshops on these. These games are not gameable because they're all about the situational behavior that occurs during the game. This individual was so happy, he actually was from outside the country, that he had heard about this process. He got his cell phone out during the career forecast and was taking pictures of it. I'm like, okay, that's really awesome. So, so he got into it. I don't know the last time someone was so excited they started taking pictures in a job interview. So, and also, he threw governance away too. So whoever's forming that governance committee, good luck, okay? This is an interesting one. This is what we call dream job. Dream job is where we ask the candidate to share with us what their dream job is, but here's the catch. It's a mob drawing activity. Oh, Sue Johnson's laughing because she can know where this one's going real fast. So guess what? As the candidate, I help out a little bit, but I've got to guide my future colleagues. How do I draw a picture of what I really want to do? Oh, that one's fun. And we get some cool things like this. Like here was a person that was really focused. They said the best way that I learn at work is by asking questions. So I want to be in an environment where I can ask questions and people like that. So real life. You know, so again, that kind of stuff comes out. We got lots of fun pictures. This is a cool way to look back also as a team. So if you're building a team, hire people, and then a year later, let's go back and look at this stuff. You want to talk about some mindful reflection? Oh yeah, we remember that one. So we archive all this data here. It's kind of fun. So this is a newer one. I'll just cut to the picture here. This is one we call dashboard. And this is where we ask people to say, how should we measure success? Very fascinating. It's something we talked a lot about at this conference. How do we measure what we're doing? And so we say, let's just design a dashboard. So pick 6 metrics, and let's talk about them. Reason I pulled this is a colleague of mine. His name's Miles. Like me, he's worked for Worldwide for like a long time, like over a decade. Now, Miles, he's a typical, what I'm going to call a typical interviewer, okay? He loves to like grill people. And go back to kind of, so what's funny, this was a live interview that we did with a candidate back in December, and Miles had no prep. So I was like, Miles, he's like, I'm ready to grill people. He even showed up with his questions. I was like, Miles, we're not going to do that today. We're going to do these activities, and in the activity, you will be able to collaborate with the people we're interviewing in a much more safe and engaging manner. Because what happens here is we're using the visual canvas to eliminate that face-to-face contact, which for some people, especially if they're introverts, can be very, very threatening. okay? If you're a person talking on a stage at a conference like this, you probably love to stare at people. But most people, many people in organizations are not. So a great benefit of doing things this way. Now, people always want to say, what the heck was that? So first and foremost, you do not blindfold the job candidate in the interview, okay? Free advice. That's called a lawsuit. But what you do is you can invite, these are some people that work for us, and they volunteered to say, we're going to put a blindfold on, and then we're going to invite our candidate to guide us to build a little tower out of the Jenga blocks. And all I can say is, we talked about this again, table 13, we've been rocking it, okay? Our dominant sense is sight. So when you take your sight away and you're forced to listen and experience and sense things about people, it's amazing what you realize. So this idea, because these guys now have an entirely different experience about what it was like to work with that individual because they were trying to build this little Jenga tower and they couldn't see what they were doing. And of course, all kinds of fun things happen when we do that. So again, don't blindfold candidates, not good, but do stuff. So real life. So this is probably almost to the end here. Got a bunch of these here, but this is a speedboat. And this is something we do towards the end of the interview where we actually will, everyone's in. So if during the interview I heard something that I'm concerned about, I'll put it up there. And then we process all of the feedback that's received. So since I do work for a technology company, like here was one we did recently where we had a candidate where on her resume and also in our conversation, she didn't talk a lot about technology. And really, again, what my team does is we'll do what we call ideation sessions to figure out what should your infrastructure be to improve how you set up your new data center. So you do need to be a little technical to be in our team. And so we threw it up there. Actually, a few of us threw it up there. And it immediately we focused on to say, wow, that didn't come up in conversation. And so we learned that this person actually does have a great technical background. It just wasn't on the resume. And it somehow didn't come up in conversation. But we caught it. And we actually hired that person. And she's doing great. So real life, I'm doing real. And this is the last one. This is what we call gifts. This is where at the end of the interview, we take a step back and we say, what did we learn today about each other? And we actually will take a little break and we'll use pipe cleaners or something fun. We've used Lego for this also. And we'll build something to say, let's call it like a gift. So if I'm the new person who's joining potentially, what gift am I bringing to the team? And if you were part of the process, what gift would you like to give as a token of appreciation to that person that joined us? And we actually invite the candidates to take these, and most of them do, but we do catch pictures. So this was a person that felt they were bringing us lots of new ideas to go in new directions. The gears was this idea of a person who was very focused on process, so which we heard in the interview, which would be very helpful for our team. And then I know I did that one because I had this idea. This person had great ideas in their head, but they were able to connect them to like how they would, share them with others using all kinds of hands and gestures and be up on stage and being relatively crazy, kind of like I am. So I thought that was great. So that's kind of what we do. So let's talk about this, how you can engage. People say, how do you get started on this? Real simple things. Again, I'm showing you a 4-year journey that we've done. We didn't get here overnight. Simple changes enable success. So if you, instead of asking a question, or even if you ask an interview question, tell me a story about that. So don't just answer the question. Let the person answer, but then contextualize the answer in a story, just like we've done at this conference. This idea of also maybe asking someone to draw a picture. Some people are good talkers, but some people are really awesome sketch artists, okay? So again, maybe draw a picture. This idea, some people like to draw, okay? In drawing, you don't have to be a good artist, okay? But think about that. And then also, invite everyone to share and exchange feedback. So one story I'll tell since I'm almost out of time is we used to have interviews, and this to me is what I just thought one of the most disrespectful things ever that happened in job interviews. We would invite candidates in, and we have to wait for the elevator. And it was like that awkward pause, like, because the second they get on, that person does, the second I'm on the elevator, they're going to talk about me. Let's stop doing that. Let's actually invite the candidate to participate in that discussion so we can make a true decision. So real life, at the end of the day, people work here. And so think about ways that in your interview, feedback, transparency, and experiment to say how you can improve. With that, I'll put the sticky notes back to sleep and watch the sunset. Thank you.